Hey, welcome to GenderqueerChat. So, it's Tuesday, and I'm Andria. So this week, we are talking about gender nonconformity, which is fun. This is why I've kind of done something a little different with my appearance today to kind of make visible queerness a kind of thing to express my queerness a little more visibly, in keeping with the topic and such. So, the topic specifically is this. Let me see. Yeah, this one. So, the topic is, do you feel pressure to express yourself in a visibly gender non-conforming way? So, this is a really good question. I think that I can answer that. Well, it could be fairly simply answered as no, but I've actually gone over this a lot with myself, and I felt like initially I wanted to say no, that I don't feel a kind of pressure to be gender non-conforming, but I think I realized that I do. However, the pressure that I feel to be gender non-conforming, I guess, is not from other people. It's not from like society or a queer community or anything like that. It's actually more from within, like from myself. So I do experience a pressure, I guess, to be visibly gender non-conforming. So I think what that really means to me technically is something like how I feel like I experience a need to kind of express myself and express my gender and things about my experience that have importance to me. So it's kind of less of a pressure, but more of like an inner felt need. So there's not a lot of pressure, but it is kind of like that. Whoops. So I think that what it is kind of, when I was going over it, it's like, to me, if anything, I feel a sort of explosive force of like that goes outwards. So not like a pressure on me, but like a pressure that goes outwards, just as a kind of expressiveness, which I need to be able to feel comfortable in some ways. Like I feel like I have a need to express myself, to express my experiences of gender, and to do things like this, with my appearance. This is really interesting for me today. This is like a really old scarf which has meaning to me, and or an old bandana that has meaning to me, and then this scarf which was made for me, and and then I put this hat on, which is really different. I think it does cool things with my hair. So to me, this is visibly gender non-conforming. But what that means to me is more related to like my personal feelings on gender nonconformity, and it's much more about my expressiveness of gender than any kind of pressure that I feel from anyone, including myself in a way, because it's not particularly a pressure. But I think that that's kind of a legitimate way to put it as well, which is why I'm kind of answering this in this way, because I think that it's the sort of thing where when I kind of investigated it for myself, I think that I do feel uncomfortable if I'm not visibly queer, if I'm not presenting myself in some way that I feel is expressive of these things that are important to me, then I feel like I've somehow lost a sense of pride or something, or like I have a sense of pride about my queerness, I guess, which can include my gender queerness and my sexuality and all of that kind of stuff. So I have a pride about these things, and I feel like it's necessary for me to express it. And given that I'm kind of usually around cis people that are just binary identified and don't even understand that trans people exist, probably, for the most part, I think this affects the dynamics of my life. Like, I think that you can definitely be kind of gender variant, and in like a broad sense, one can be gender variant and not have to be visibly queer. So I think that's another important thing to make. Hopefully this isn't too scattered or something, but I think another important thing to make when addressing this kind of topic is that I do this for myself. This is a personal expression, and my expressions of gender and such can be quite varied. But I think nobody should feel pressured to be a certain way. You don't have to be visibly queer, and also if you are gender variant and stuff, or whatever, really, you don't have to. You don't have to feel pressured to be, gender non-conforming, and we shouldn't feel pressured to not be, or that somehow by not being visibly queer, that anyone is less valid. So I just think that's important to put out as well, that there don't have to be any kind of hierarchies around visible queerness and things like that. Everyone is perfectly acceptable just the way they are, and should be respected in the ways that they need. So I think that's kind of the short-ish way of answering this topic. I came up with some questions too when I was thinking of this topic for myself, that relate to visibility. So there's that. I'm just pulling it up. And then I think the other thing I wanted to say real quick is that as part of my new choice identity, and that has connotations for me, but as part of that new choice kind of identity, it's about accepting things for me which might be really outside of what I would normally want to accept, and which can go into territories which appear to be similar to binary gender presentations, if you will. So it someone could kind of see me and go, oh look, this must be a cis man or something, which I am not. So to some extent I think I've learned, or I'm learning, that it's okay for me to do that, and how I look is more about how I relate to how I look. Or does this make sense? It's so much more important that any this pressure I feel, if you will, is more of an expression outwards, and that I can do things which are comfortable for me. And I think there are other ways of alleviating this pressure that I might feel inside, that don't include kind of a more visible or vibrant kind of expression of my gender, which can change. It can be fairly fluid. So I think that given that I sometimes am in places where I might internally or something, where I might express something which is really which could give the appearance of being some kind of binary gender, and not visibly queer. But I'm learning really that sometimes this can be an incredible sort of outlet for me, where I could feel really femme inside or something like that, and then use as a sort of protection, and at least as a kind of protection, I can use a sort of appearance which, wear certain clothing and have some kind of appearance which would maybe look like a cis person, particularly like a cis male or something, even though it does not mean that for me. It can mean whatever it means to me, but I can feel really femme inside and then do that and like that because it feels more authentic. To me, if I were to go, oh, femme to me means that I have to wear a lot of makeup and things like that, if I were to do that, that would be kind of giving into some social pressures, I think, to some extent, to kind of go, oh, this is what femme is or something, and this is how I'm supposed to express that. And I just feel like that's kind of worth acknowledging and sort of relates to this, because there are different ways to be visible. And so I'm going to read this question in a moment, and it basically involves making a distinction between what or understanding what visible means. Does that make sense? When it's personal, and when visible relates more to other people and some kind of objective visibility of something. So to me, this is important, that I can look a certain way and feel totally differently inside and actually be completely okay with that. That I can use the misperceptions that I kind of get, or the perceptions that I seem to receive from like binary cis people that have no understanding of trans people or genderqueer people, etc. I can use those misperceptions to my advantage and be more authentic to something like my femness than than if I were to just wear a lot of makeup or something and do some appearance, which might work for me on my own, but the dynamics would be totally different socially, because I would probably still be having some body categorization forcibly assigned to me as part of someone's perceptions, and that would affect how they interact with me, and I wouldn't feel good about that. So to me, there's an element of like a disparity between and yet a potential kind of alignment that's invisible between what I express visibly or outwardly and how I feel inside. Does that make sense? So, I can wear this kind of thing, and this means to me what it means to me. And I may or may not go out like this specifically, but there are other things I can wear, like this one jacket that I have. This is a really old jacket I've had for a long time. It's just a black jacket with quicksilver, and this kind of has certain meanings to me, and if I wear that, then I might feel very differently, and it can change how I feel inside and how I'm being perceived. So I think that it's worth kind of ignoring these pressures to some extent, but also working with the pressures and social expectations and how we're perceived in such a way that we can like find routes for outlets of things which are important to us, and that finding those alternative outlets may be more validating, like to be able to feel really femme when I put something like that on, which may be viewed as quite masculine or something, but to be able to somehow feel freer inside and embrace a kind of deep femininity or something is really important to me, and I think that that's something that can take some work, but is really a valuable thing that I think anyone could possibly look into for themselves and find beneficial. So hopefully that stuff makes sense that I've talked about. Do feel free to leave comments and such, and ask questions and things, just here on my perspective. So let's see. So I kind of came up with this question that I think relates to visibility, which is a part of the question, and it is, it's basically like, what would I share or withhold, like, about my queerness, if it were possible? Would I like to be invisible to cis people, or selectively private about certain elements of my queerness? So I thought this was kind of interesting as an introspective kind of question, because it can maybe help a person to make a distinction between what they feel like making visible, and what they would make visible for themselves and for other people. Like what's personal, and what relates more to the perceptions of other people. So, yeah. So that's kind of my little question. Apparently I'm at like 13 minutes, so I'll try to just wrap it up now. Thanks for listening to this. This is quite a good topic. I really like this one. And so there's an optional article, and I would love to respond to that, and I read it, and I thought it was really cool, and had a lot of good things to kind of go over with that. But I think I'm just going to answer the bonus question, which is, are you a morning or a night person? I'm kind of more of a night person, I guess, but I tend to be up, whenever I'm up. I sometimes go nocturnal, and I like it, I'm fine with it, so I try to enjoy where I'm at, wherever that is. So, yeah, I think that's what I gotta say. I'm gonna keep it under 15 minutes, so, alright, take care, you guys, have a great week.